story time. So it's a story from the Buddha's time relating to elements practice. And I'm going to not read it all because it's very long, but I'll skip some bits and try and get to the point. The longer advice to Rahula. Rahula was the Buddha's son who joined the monastic order. So I have heard. At one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anatta Pindika's monastery. Then the Buddha robed up in the morning and taking his bowl and robe, entered Savatthi for alms, to go for food, And Venerable Rahula also robed up and followed behind the Buddha. Then the Buddha looked back at Rahula and said, Rahula, you could truly see any kind of form at all, past, future or present, internal or external, solid or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all form, with attuned understanding. This is not mine, I am not this is not myself. And Rahula says, only form, Blessed One. Blessed One is how people used to speak to the Buddha. Only form, Holy One. Form, Rahula, as well as feeling and perception and choices and consciousness. That's what makes us. Form, feelings, perception, choices and consciousness. Then Rahula thought, who would go to the village for alms today after being advised directly by the Buddha? Turning back, he sat down cross-legged at the root of a certain tree, setting his body straight and establishing mindfulness in his presence, exactly as we've been doing. Then in the late afternoon, Rahula came out of retreat, went to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side and said to him, Sir, how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated to be very fruitful and beneficial? This is where I jump a bit, that I'll read tomorrow. So the Buddha answers, Rahula, meditate like the earth. For when you meditate like the earth, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Suppose they were to toss both clean and unclean things on the earth, like feces, urine, spit, pus, and blood. The earth isn't horrified, repelled, and disgusted because of this. In the same way, meditate like the earth, for when you meditate like the earth, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Meditate like water, for when you meditate like water, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Suppose they were to wash both clean and unclean things in the water, like feces, urine, spit, pus, and blood. The water isn't horrified, repelled, and disgusted. In the same way, meditate like water. Meditate like fire. For when you meditate like fire, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Suppose a fire were to burn both clean and unclean things, like feces, urine, spit, pus, and blood. The fire isn't horrified, repelled, and disgusted. In the same way, meditate like fire. For then, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Meditate like wind. For when you meditate like wind, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Suppose the wind were to blow on both clean and unclean things, like feces, urine, spit, pus, blood. The wind isn't horrified, repelled, and disgusted because of this. In the same way, meditate like the wind. For when you meditate like the wind, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Meditate like space, for when you meditate like space, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Just as space is not established anywhere, in the same way, meditate like space. For when you meditate like space, pleasant and unpleasant contacts will not occupy your mind. Meditate on love, for when you meditate on love, any ill will be given up. Meditate on compassion, for when you meditate on compassion, any cruelty will be given up. Meditate on rejoicing, for when you meditate on rejoicing, any discontent will be given up. Meditate on equanimity, for when you meditate on equanimity, any repulsion will be given up. Meditate on impermanence, for when you meditate on impermanence, any conceit, I am, will be given up. So I wanted to bring that in, that sutta, that story, because it's very clearly saying how the Buddha was teaching about the possibilities of realizing direct body experience of impermanence and impersonality and not self through these elements meditation. So it's one thing is that it's part of what we've been meditating on. Another is that often what happens to me is I guide these meditations and people think that I'm inventing it all, that it's some crazy wacky thing I'm on. I'm like on some new age trip, you know. Actually, it goes back 2,600 years, this meditation on the earth. So it's like an extra awareness we can bring in when we're doing that, like a grounding meditation, for example, on the solidity of the body. We can be kind of hovering in the background with this special type of awareness of impermanence, of the movingness, the changingness of the sensations of solidity that we have. Also, we can be with this hovering awareness, we can be bringing in or kind of looking out for, feeling out for, where is the me in there? That's why he's saying when you meditate on the earth element, the conceit of I disappears. But we can directly get in contact with that realization through meditating on the elements and questioning, where in there am I? Is this sense of I that I believe in so solidly? So maybe for a fuller unfolding of this explanations, it's helpful if I just say a little bit about the three main kind of aspects of Buddhist practice that we're looking out for in our meditation. So it's not like having drones, you know. It's something more soft than drones. It's kind of hoveringness. And they're not an intellectual concept. They're actually a fact of life. So the three are anicca, anatta, and dukkha. I'll start with the last one. Dukkha. which is a Pali word just for suffering, unsatisfactoriness. And it's not saying that in Buddhism we're saying life is suffering. It's saying just there is suffering. It's part of being human, that there is suffering. It happens, no? And there can be very, like, subtle sufferings of, being here, wanting to hear what's next, but desperately needing a pee, That's a little baby dukkha. Baby suffering, no? We're thirsty, but we forgot our water over there, and whatever. Or it's too hot, or it's too cold, And it can be the loss of someone precious to us. It can be a partner that's broken our heart. It can be somebody we know who's really sick, or ourselves, or, It can go from that extreme sufferings to the tiny, stuck thing where you're on your bike or your car, you're at the red lights, and it's just like, I'm going to miss my appointment at the dentist. So these are the dukkhas of life, and some of them are just, they're part of, it just happens as part of being a human that we do get older. We're already different, no? Everybody's different from when they were 5 years old. It's already, the body's changed, no? A lot. So we're moving towards the end all the time. There's the losing and separateness from loved ones. There's illness. There's not getting what we want sometimes. And then there's what we add to it. As I was speaking the other day with pain, what we add to something that just is, that's beyond anything we're doing ourselves, But then we add to it. We add a whole lot of mental pain or tension that creates physical pain. So that's dukkha, in a very short, brief way. There is anicca, impermanence, which is also just part of life, hey? That there is change happening all the time, even just with the seasons, no? Even with the day. The day is ending. The sun is going down. Impermanence. How we feel is different from this morning. Different from 5 minutes ago. Our emotions have changed. Our body temperature has changed. Our level of tiredness. So this impermanence factor, it seems like really, yeah, of course, everything's changing in life. But to use these teachings and meditations to get a body realization of impermanence, slowly we're growing that body wisdom. We're growing this awareness, body wisdom, as opposed to just hearing something that's an idea. We go, yeah, sure, of course, obvious, noon, we know that, Seasons change, we change, life changes. But the body realization can really help the more we develop that, with freedom, with suffering less, actually. I'll give you a dramatic example, yeah? Last week I was in hospital. I was in really bad pain. I was in pain for a whole week. Painkillers, not doing everything, not doing enough. And I knew it would change. I knew it. Not because of the spiritual practice, but also because I've been to hospital a few times, I knew that pain was difficult to cope with, but it would not last in that intensity. And knowing in my body and my heart and my mind that pain wasn't going to last, outside of the rational mind, which goes, of course I'll get over it. But knowing in my body and heart, it made it less painful to deal with. So this is the point of, we're meditating on earth element, liquid element, and we're feeling into the changingness of life as we're doing it. We're feeling into there's a dukkha coming, some sort of suffering, and we can observe it in that context of it will change, it will change. The last one is anatta, which means not self. And that's the nature of, like the earth element that's outside, there's earth element in us. And in us, when we get really into that meditation on earth element, we can feel the impersonality of that. Have you tried? Like when we're really grounded, does it really feel like you can put a name to that groundedness? Is it really yours, mine? Is that really noon when I'm in the liquid element or in the air element, when I'm breathing and really following my breath gently through the body? There's this aspect of not self. So the practice there is to be looking out for those three as we're meditating, because it gives us a very easy opportunity to feel impermanence and the not selfness. Because often the dukkha comes from believing too much that it is me, mine, that the emotion I'm feeling is me, mine, intensely. Yeah? It's almost like I've watched myself do it. A bit like, on the computer, you have an intense emotion, and and it's like straight away you put it in the file, me. This is me. And it's just an emotion. And it doesn't mean to not be present with emotions. It doesn't mean to use that as an avoidance, to not feel. We can still intensely feel our emotions without believing so much that they're sticking to us, that's us. Because in the end, in the beginning, in the middle, it's difficult to find what is self, isn't it? As the Buddha was saying there in the text, there's form, there's feelings, as in pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. There's consciousness, there's choices, there's perceptions. All of that coming together. In Buddhism we call them the 5 heaps. The 5 heaps that come together into one heap that we're calling self. So as many of us have, I know, worked with what is social construction of gender, for example, and that it's a social construction, yeah? So all those 2,600 years ago, the Buddha was saying the self, what we are calling self, is a construction that comes from materiality, choices, perception, feeling, that we're creating, moment by moment, we're creating self. And we're often believing it, like we could believe in the construction of nationality, And yet, where does it exist? How can you find German in you? Like really, in your bones. Is it German in my bones? Is it Serb? Is it Italian? Russian? I'm so blown out by how many different cultures there are here. French? No. Finnish? It's not in our bones. We can't find it, really, when we look for it. We can't find gender either, really. Hey. Breathing in. Breathing in. What's my gender? Stardust, you know? So for, I know there's a lot of people here who are non-binary and allies open, you know, and so that we have an easy gateway into this understanding of the Buddhist teaching. Because we've already started to understand that, you know. It's a construction. And we construct with perceptions, you know. Our perceptions of how we see things. We go, oh, that's me. That's making me. My way of seeing. But your way of seeing might have come from what your parents told you. Might have come from the school you went to, the kind of books you've read, the films you've seen, you know. So an example for me of that, I notice how much, like in my life, I've watched so many American films made in America that culture is in my psyche. I don't know about Kazakhstan, you know, because most of this planet watches mainly American films since they're kids, you know. Luckily there are others as well, but we've integrated something into our perceptions and our way of seeing the world. It's a conditioning. So all of those are conditionings, you know. Where we come from, the culture, the kind of education, the economical background, the gender we've been told we are, you know, the life experiences have come into our construction of self. And then we come to meditate and somebody says, what's meditation? And I'm like, oh, I can't say that on the first day. But it's seeing through that. It's seeing through that construction. Getting a taste of steadiness, calmness, peacefulness, ease, some joy, some tranquility, and then allowing the structure to be seen through. But not to be got rid of either. But that's a subject for maybe tomorrow. So thank you very much.